Melissa Errico, welcome to Cultural Attaché.
Oh, thank you. I like your hot air balloon.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully, I'm not full of hot air as well, but we'll find out by the end of this interview.
Have you
Now,
ever been in a hot air balloon?
I have actually. I have
Uh,
actually. And I will tell you that when you're this tall, it's not comfortable because you're very close to the fire.
Oh gosh, I hadn't thought of that.
I'm 6'2", so I was very close to the fire.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, I
it was-
always wanted to I will one day. I hear it's a little claustrophobic even though you're flying. You're
I
in a
didn't
little
even I didn't even know we had taken off. It's like I've sudden I because it's so flawless and so effortless that it's like, oh, I'm now 50 feet over the ground. It was an incredible experience. So I do
amazing.
recommend it.
What
I
country are
also
you in? The
it was
US?
in it was in it was in California. It would be nice if I said that it was, somewhere in France and somewhere romantic, but it was out by San Bernardino. Not really sexy.
Well, I don't know. Maybe
But
it
it
is
was
second from
but it
above.
was but it was fun.
Some things are. Okay.
What's
Well,
also fun is your brand new album that's coming out called Sondheim in the City, which is a follow-up to Sondheim Sublime.
which
Uh,
came in the mail last night.
Congratulations. And
Look at this.
and I've had the privilege of listening to the album, which is extraordinary.
Oh, thank you. Look at that New York City. Doesn't that give you emotions right away when you just see it?
Anytime I see the Chrysler Building, it gives me emotions.
Yeah, it's just floating like that. They did such a beautiful job
They
with
did, absolutely.
there's Mr. Sondheim himself.
Indeed. Well, you have him there and I have him over my shoulder in this video because there's a Hirschfeld behind me.
Yes, yes. Oh, how beautiful. Oh, how beautiful. This is me as a little girl.
Right.
Moments away from another 100 people just got off of the train and I wanted to get to I was born in New York City and that's me learning to walk in Washington Square Park.
Which is probably a lot easier then than it is now, given how many more people are in New York.
Exactly. And family history, that's my grandmother's sister who was an original Ziegfeld girl. And
Wow.
I and so I got very interested in Sondheim's New York shows, which we'll talk about, and one of them being the 1971 Follies, in which um, Steve was concerned about what would now be more protected by the preservation movements that we've had, but the tearing down of these great Ziegfeld theaters and these classical theaters. It would have been on 42nd Street itself, the actual Ziegfeld Theater, and was very uh, interesting to grow up in a house where my mother said, we have a Ziegfeld girl in the family. And there I am at Carnegie Hall just last year singing from Follies. So they've just done a beautiful job and it just came in the mail and I'm delighted to share it. And the musicians are the ones who made it happen.
Yeah, and you have a great band with you on this album.
Epic. This man, Lewis Nash, is one of
Hmm.
the greatest drummers in the history of the instrument.
Right.
And he didn't know Sondheim so well. But we wanted something uniquely funky because my idea here, my second Sondheim album, is rhythm, pressure, bliss. And I'll tell you a little bit more about why rhythm. But we had this idea of like what kind of rhythm. And Rob Mathis, who works with Sting and is a wonderful pop producer, he said we need somebody like Lewis Nash, like an epic guy, like a. And then he's like, maybe we should just call Lewis Nash, which we did. And he said yes. And there he is.
There he is. There he
There
is.
he
Well, for those who don't know, you have appeared on stage in Sunday in the Park with George at the Kennedy Center, in
is.
the dual roles of Marie and Dot. You were also in Passion at Classic Stage Company as Clara.
Mhm.
And then you were at Encores with Do I Hear a Waltz? So beyond these two albums, you have a lengthy association with Stephen Sondheim's work. So since it's been over 5 years since Sondheim Sublime came out, when did the desire to do a second collection of his material start bubbling up within you?
I think I always knew that I was going to spend much of my life turning to him. I don't know that I knew I was wanting to record until the pandemic happened and I started to turn to him yet again in another crisis. Sondheim Sublime is a very inward record. It's a lyrical record. I was going through a hard time. in my own life. And it's funny, I just keep turning to Sondheim. I know he wrote a song facetiously titled God, that people see him as God, or that is such a funny song. But I'm not going to say he's my religion, but I do think that he is probably the greatest source for me of wisdom and courage in something like a scripture, or something like a sacred scroll, a druid or something.
Well,
So
I will say that you get to recite my favorite lyric of all of his when you did Sunday in the Park with George, which is, "I chose and my world was shaken. So what? The choice may have been mistaken. The choosing was not." I can't tell you how many times I have quoted that to people when they're trying to figure out what to do with their lives.
yes, we have to choose. And sometimes we step on a stone and it seems like we're going left, and then we step on another one and now we're going right. And then now we're going left. But you know what? You get to the other side. You have to step, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
So I turned to him at that time for Sondheim Sublime, in a time where I was looking for philosophical support, and I was looking for creative support, and I was a little bit frightened. I had a health concern, and I was interested in themes in his work. We disappoint, we disappear, we die, but we don't. What do we leave behind when we depart this world? Ideas like that, and empathic, loving things too, so I could share what I would consider almost anthems of protectiveness and love. Ironically, from, let's say, Sweeney Todd, which is really a musical about serial killing and, and cannibalism. But I found in that, not while I'm around, to be the most loving anthem of protective, selfless, maternal love. So I was creating a record that was very inward facing, and Sondheim worked with me on the creation of that. He had ideas for it. He knew what I was working through. He knew what I was feeling about his work. He was a little embarrassed by the word sublime, because I think he felt it was so spiritual and maybe corny. I think he said it was camp. And we had endless discussions about what the sublime meant to the great poets in the world, including Wordsworth. And he would just say, I don't know, whatever. And we had these unbelievable emails about sublimity and where it appears in art history and poetry and poetic history. I wanted to align him with these sublime ideas, which are about things beautiful and terrifying, like the sublime movement in Turner, where the painter, where his work was to create shipwrecks and storms, where things are beautiful and scary. So I wanted something high and emotional in that way, and philosophical. And Sondheim and I worked together on choosing the songs. He made some suggestions about that. Now, the pandemic happened. We are living through a thaw, maybe a kind of, we're coming out of this terrifying time, and I was thinking about New York City, and I was thinking about, how everybody was leaving New York during the pandemic. And I was thinking, I want to recommit to New York City, and it gave me everything. So I kept looking at New York, and I did a concert about New York City called Melissa Sings Her New York. And I thought of all the ambitions I had and the dreams and the wonder. And I started to sense something in his work, but I had, let's say, 60% of that concert was Sondheim. And then I had other composers that were women. I used a lot of Georgia Stitt, Judy Collins, Joni Mitchell, Chelsea Morning song. And I was looking at Dorothy Parker and other women's voices as well. And I was really exploring Laura Nyro and just the promises of New York, harmonizing with strangers, these great ideas I got from Laura Nyro and so on. And then he died after the concerts were over. And when Sondheim died, the ideas of New York were so rich in my head. And then when he passed, I worried for New York, and I thought about New York and his New York, that he made New York for me. And for so many of us, he defines it, and he's a great poet himself of New York. So you can ask me more questions, but that's why it happened. It happened because another life impulse happened in which I turned to him, and he seemed to have great riches to offer me to think about my life and my city and our pluralistic world and all the things that are threatened right now, or people that are trying to be heard. Um, Protest song, even like everybody says, don't. I felt like everything is there again in Sondheim for another chapter in my life.
But it also meant doing a deep dive. And what impresses me the most is there are going to be people who are going to be surprised by some of the material on this album, because I don't think many people have heard Dawn or Nice Town Butt, And for those who don't know, Nice Town Butt came from one of his earliest works in the 1950s called Climb High that never got finished. Oddly, he never wrote about that song in his collected lyrics. So I'm wondering what was your process of discovering other songs that maybe the world doesn't know that would fit the story and the narrative you have in this album?
Well, I have to say, Nice Town, but you're going to have to wait for the vinyl. That's a track that's not going to come out on the 16th. We're going to have 14 songs, and that is a coda of juvenilia of his youth, but that is a song that is not going to come out just yet. But I'm thrilled that I'm going to be singing it live at Birdland. I'm going to be singing it all the time, but it's a song that it just has to get organized really to be shared with the world. It's a brilliant piece of his youth, and it is meant to just be a humorous and energetic finale to all the thoughts that I put into the more classic songs. But I open also with an unusual song, which is on the uh, first release, Dawn, which was published music, but it was an unproduced film. It's a wonderful song that nobody knows, and I'm super excited for people to hear it. And I hope that it acts as not a purification, that's going to sound too corny, but the idea of a new beginning, of a New York waking up. What is New York at dawn? It's quiet, but it still hums with life and promise. So dawn is this a beautiful, it's almost like you can hear everybody waking up and stretching. You can hear all the and we have this amazing famous trumpet player playing jazz, but it's like a jazz morning, jazz bugle, the morning's call. So I hope that it's the beginning of the album with a kind of beauty, as well as a what the heck is this song feeling? Where'd you get this? My album is very lovingly curated by a massive team of insiders, intellectuals, people who knew him. I certainly didn't curate this myself. Michael Mitnick is a great young screenwriter, good friend of Mr. Sondheim's, and a genius. And he was instrumental in finding rare material, accurate material, authentic material, unusual material. Sentences were considered from old drafts of shows, New York shows, early rehearsals. I was listening to things. So it was really lovingly curated.
Yes, well, I hope that means there's a whole lot of material that we still haven't heard that we will get to hear either from you or from other people throughout the years ahead.
Yeah, there's more things out there that there's always more. There's more things. I put some cut music on here as well. Music cut from musicals. Jazz fans always love the alternate take. It's like Chet Baker did this, or blah blah blah. I think that the alternate take is like the big thing. Charlie Parker. This is the one that they didn't put on the record. I have the same obsession with cut songs, and there's some beautiful cut music from Follies that I included here. Can That Boy Foxtrot? We've heard it, but it's not the most common song, and it wasn't meant to happen, which I think is a masterpiece. I have a theory about it too.
Yeah, I think it wasn't meant to happen. I think in his collected lyrics was his attempt to do like a Cole Porter true pathos song.
Interesting. I believe he rewrote it in his head when he wrote Send in the Clowns. I believe that it has the same meter, in a metered quality, meditative, regret, and it's about denial. Send in the clowns, I'll be fine. It wasn't meant to happen, I'm good. But
Right.
but they're, and in the song, as just with Send in the Clowns, don't bother, they're here. You can really hear the other person is in the room. Quick, there ought to be clowns. You can hear that she's sticking him. Uh, I I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. In this, she says my dear quite a few times. And well, my dear, take care. It wasn't meant to happen. So I hear that I hear the presence of the listener. I think it's the Send in the Clowns that's just super hard to sing.
Right. Well, which brings me to the whole concept of approaching any of the songs, particularly the songs that are better known, that have been recorded by countless people before you and will be recorded by countless people after you. What are the challenges for you as an artist beyond bringing yourself to the song, but finding new ways in that offer us as an audience different insights into your perspective on the songs and maybe perhaps even the creator, Stephen Sondheim's perspective on them?
Like, how do I do it? Like, how
Yeah,
do
I
I
mean,
get
what,
all the past out of my mind?
well, how do you, or to take a line from Sunday in the Park with George, anything you do, let it come from you, then it will be new.
Yeah.
What was the process for you in approaching songs that the world has heard multiple times?
You know, some of the songs like Being Alive, that's a young person's song, but I have spent my whole life as an ingenue, singing from a young person's perspective. And in a way, I've been gradually beating the ingenue out of myself, and now she's really gone. So I guess I was kind of thinking about what that song is saying. Maybe when I was younger, I was thinking, somebody hold me, somebody, all this, like, I want happiness, I would probably have thought. I want that connection and stuff. But I think now I realize she's not asking for happiness. She's kind of asking for a kind of pain, someone to force her to feel alive, through the kind of armor in a way of like sophistication and familiarity that we put on, which is so much a part of New York life. So just someone to break through to you, break all those obstacles, make you feel alive. So I guess I kind of take time to think about the original source and then where I'm at. And then once I'm at that, I always have to honor the first reason it was written. But then I think hard about what else it could mean so that I can sing it, put it in my own perspective. Sorry Grateful, for instance, is such a great song, but it's not normally sung by a woman. So it's not that hard to play it differently. It's me, but a woman can feel the same way,
Of
you know.
course, of course. No reason a woman shouldn't record Sorry Grateful,
I
as far
guess
as I'm
it's just
concerned.
studying and honoring the um yeah, in that case you're right. Yeah. So just studying and honoring the original source, but I can also be a person that sings an ambivalent song about ambivalence. It's an aggressively ambivalent song. It's amazing.
Right.
Um,
Now, there are a lot of people who have a stereotype of New Yorkers as being neurotic New Yorkers. And Sondheim himself is quoted as saying, I prefer neurotic people. I like to hear the rumblings beneath the surface. You've created a New York centric album.
yes.
You're going to be performing at Birdland next week
He
as
yeah,
part
he
of the
said that,
album
huh?
release.
Yeah, I remember he said that. Yeah, I read that somewhere. Yeah.
Yes,
Or he
it,
spoke it in a BBC interview, I think.
yes, but you're gonna. I think he wrote beautifully for neurotic people, and
That's what I did listen to in the car, by the way, are those all those BBC interviews. My children cannot believe I just drive and listen to Sondheim talking. The BBC goes way back to the 70s, all the way to pretty current.
right,
Yeah,
right.
anyhow, yeah.
They're fabulous. But do you think there's a part of Sondheim in the City that sort of celebrates these neurotic people that Sondheim was talking about?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I think there's a kind of jaunty, upbeat quality to my record because I don't think it's a sour and cynical world, actually. I think if you look closely at Sondheim, there's a kind of ecstatic pleasure in New York, the rhythm of things. I think Another 100 People is an ecstatic song. And even everybody says don't. Sure, all these people are blocking you, but step over them. So I do think that he's more than satiric and malicious. He's he's uh, like I say, ecstatic. You know, um, it's exciting. I think he was excited by the possibilities once you stop uh, trying to make life make sense. In a literal or linear, simple way. Because once you're allowed to be nuts, a lot of problems vanish, and a lot of humor and love and complication and emotion and style and laughing and nightlife. I think so much becomes possible. Um, I guess that's a middle-aged person speaking, justifying herself. But does that answer your question?
It does. It does. But it's interesting. You know, I've been a lifelong Sondheim.
I don't want to get stuck in this idea that he's a satirist or that it's satirical, malicious, dark, something, and neurotic. I want it to be virtuosic, a sort of sequence of songs, one after another, that are full of life. You know.
Right.
Uh,
Well, the beautiful thing is when he wrote these songs, he never judged the characters he was writing about. He always
mhm.
just presented them who they were, warts and all,
Yes,
and
ab-
somehow captured all of us in the process.
absolutely. All these off-kilter people.
Right. Because
Yeah,
who amongst us is not off kilter?
absolutely. He was so skilled, at capturing that. So skilled.
Right. Now, your album is coming out after he's passed. He just for the first time in his career, and he wasn't here to see it, had 3 shows going on
Yes.
simultaneously in New York, which to
Oh,
me, that's my kind of Broadway and off Broadway. Um, but a show like Merrily We Roll Along is having an enormous success where the original production only ran 16 performances. Here We Are is essentially truly a half finished work, but it's brilliant. Uh,
mhm.
so I'm
And
wondering
we
what your
we recently had company,
had
yeah.
company. Sweeney Todd is running with a new cast joining very soon, imminently, I believe. Uh,
Hmm.
but do you think there are reasons other than the fact that Stephen Sondheim has passed that his work is being embraced so vociferously and voraciously as it is now?
Because it never gets boring, right? It's weirdly I don't know. It's like relentlessly interesting. It never there's no bottom. It's like you always take an unpolluted breath, when you listen to him. It's not it just feels like weirdly not pure, but it's so smart, and there's so much love in it as well. And it's never dated. Somehow it's never dated. We can be in Victorian times, we can be in the 70s, but it's so much about change in people that it's always current. I don't even feel these New York songs are dated. I don't feel Here We Are is dated in terms of it. Yes, it captures a dated time, but so why him?
Well, why now? Why now? It can't be just because he passed away, because that would fade out very quickly.
Well,
But I
like
think
all
he,
good art, sometimes it takes time. Why is he more popular now than he used to be, perhaps? Boy,
yeah.
I don't know. It's like how many great artists are not understood in their time
Well, it's
entirely.
easy to list Van Gogh at the top of that list.
Yeah, it's just there's so many layers. Um, there's so many layers, and maybe we need him more now than we used to. Maybe we understand that his talents and his gifts had some difficulties at a time that wanted something more cheery or simple or commercial. Maybe that the British wave and everything that annoyed him. He was looking in the mind. He was going in the mind. Not everybody wants to do that, and I think now we're really not afraid.
That's true. That's true. Very well said. Now in the line,
More
yeah,
of what he was. Yeah, it's
and he
deeply, and he was such a deeply personal. His work is so deeply personal. I think you can really hear uh, him, and more than he even admitted in a lot of his work.
right,
So,
because I think he said that um what Opening Doors was the closest to an autobiographical song he ever wrote.
well, see, he doesn't know about himself really. Finishing the hat is very him.
Of course. Of course. Now, in the liner notes, and for anybody who's seen your writing in the New York Times, they know what a beautiful writer you are. You talk about visiting Sondheim's New York home when it was up for sale. But was that the first time you'd been there?
Um, yes, actually. I feel like I'd been there because I saw that wonderful interview with Adam Gettle. You remember? And I feel like I feel like I watched it so many times. I feel like I was in that room. But no, when I walked in the room, I was so overwhelmed. I was like, "Oh my God, there's the chair. Oh my God, there's the thing. Oh my God, there's the," I was just, and I was almost so nervous, like I like I wrote about. Like I didn't want to overstare at things. I didn't want to seem I did sincerely go there to consider buying it. I mean, it was outrageously expensive. I'm not sure. I think I wanted to see it, and then maybe there would be a way to like turn it into a museum or a school, and I'd have to get, like a donor, and I had some cockamamie idea that nobody was saving that house. I just it was an instinct. My instinct was, oh my God, somebody has to buy this and honor it. I'll honor it forever. And then of course I couldn't. My father said you would destroy yourself financially, possibly all your family, your kids forever, and where would you get this not for profit? It was just a cockamamie idea.
But an idea born out of passion.
Yeah, I just wanted that house to stay as it is and honor it somehow. Um, so I wrote about it. And that's the only way I will live with it forever because I got to write about it. But yeah, I had that just amazing feeling like, wow, I'm in his house. I
Well,
didn't
I was
really, yeah, look around too much. I did look around, but I wasn't being like gross.
well,
I should
you
have
got
opened my eyes more. They had all these things on the walls, all his thing. I didn't go like, oh, 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 and I didn't like take pictures or anything. I just stood there like, wow. Anyway, you were saying.
well, I was just I went to Steve's house 4 or 5 times, but I never left the ground floor. I never got to go upstairs, so I'm envious that you got
Oh,
to do that. We would just
yeah.
sort of sit downstairs, share a bottle of wine, talk.
You did that?
Yeah, several times.
Oh my God. What kind of wine did he drink?
White wine. It was always white wine. Numerous varietals, but it was always white wine.
Oh, really? White wine.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the
Interesting.
and the two standard poodles were always with us.
Oh, that is so amazing.
It was amazing. So let me ask you one more question.
Drank with him. No, I have never drank. Yeah.
Yeah. It was fun. These are experiences I never thought, Melissa, that I would ever have. I
I
mean,
hear you.
stretch the
I hear
imagination.
you.
Um, so let me finish our time by asking you what your process of performing Sondheim has taught you about who you are as a person and who you are as an artist.
Well, look, there's a couple things I can't claim. I can't claim, though I wrote hundreds of emails with him. He loved that I wrote in the Times, and he liked that developed in me since like 2016. I felt encouraged by him to be a female kind of intellectual person. So he encouraged me over a long period of time. I can't pretend we were like intimately close friends. I didn't have a bottle of wine with him, but like a very dedicated, almost a daughter figure, I've honored him by thinking about him so much and applying his stuff for my own personal survival in a way, and wonder and fascination. And I find him funny, and sexy. And I love going to the shows, even if I'm not in them. The work we did do together was brazen, was bold. So I felt encouraged to be bold as well. The first day I met him was at the Kennedy Center. And because I had studied art history at Yale, I was such a know-it-all that I thought, oh, the Impressionist era, I'm a model, so I should be in a bath or something. I should be naked because these women were always on over a basin in their bathtub. That's nudity everywhere. And if I'm trying to get George's attention and failing, you could really fail. It would really hurt if you're nothing on. And I said, why don't I do color and light undressed in the tub? And I could be getting ready for the Follies because he promised he'd take me, right? And then George says, I have to finish the hat. And I just think it'll be so embarrassing and sad, and vulnerable. And I mentioned this to him on the first day. I said, guess what I thought we could do? Because they would all be in one room painting the bathtub. In the old days in the West Village, the bathtub was in the kitchen. So I've, the eccentric artists' homes. Even in Paris in that time in the late 1800s. So be accurate. And so I spoke to him quickly and with this idea, like, let's take all my clothes off. And he was looking at me like that was the first day I met him. And I was so young, would never approach him now with such ebullience, and just a quick suggestion, just have to change a few things, I said. and he did, he did. So the idea that he thought I was so cuckoo but it was fun. And also I've learned that the original drafts of Sunday in the Park with George, they did want Bernadette to do some nudity. And she did say right away, just FYI, I'm not going to do that. I don't blame her. This was a show in development. But so I was, something like hitting an old bell for them because that was like, they could ring that now. So that was fun. And then when we did Passion required so much abandon. And I didn't have any problem with abandon, maybe too much sometimes, but too much is what it's about. So all systems go for Passion there. Take your, he told me Melissa, he used to say funny things like, it starts with an orgasm and it ends with an orgasm. And I'd be like, oh, that's good. And then also, this is a long answer, but in Passion, we established an obsession with detail, a shared obsession and pleasure in detail. I was at the Sitzprobe, the first orchestra rehearsal, and I had to sing didn't, and there's an apostrophe and apostrophe T. And he said, it's not didn't, it's didn't. I said, yeah, but you can't sing nothing. You have to have a vowel quality. Didn't. And he goes, no, didn't. You have to didn't. I said, but then how do you sing a silence? There's a nothing. That's an absence. And so we had this whole conversation about what an apostrophe is. It's the removal of a sound. It's a shortening. And so he said, yes, it's a shortening. I said, so there's a nothing there. You want me to sing a nothing? He goes, yes. I said, where? In your nose, he said. I said, so I'd have to put tone on nothing. It'd have to be the tone nothing. And he said, yes. I said, I didn't know what he was talking about. So I go in to sing it and I did it. It's an interesting, weird thing. You sort of send the sound into your face, but don't say ent, didn't, said did. So you just pop it with pitch. And it was super fun. And it was sort of like a bubble or something in my brain. I'm like, oh, that was funny. And then as I sang, there were other apostrophes and I kept looking at him. And he marveled in the fact that I found apostrophes everywhere. And we kept looking at each other across the room. Then other people were singing apostrophes and I would look at him. So we had one of those things where singing the silence, the absence was so weird. I loved it. And I marveled in it, and I became cuckoo about his eyes when he gets excited about me looking, at detail like that. So that was super fun. And then when we did Do I Hear a Waltz, when he didn't direct that or anything, but he did attend, and he pulled me aside and he said, Melissa, in the party scene, find one sentence and make the audience hate you. Everyone on stage as well. Make sure everybody hates you. The audience and the cast. And I was like, what line? He goes, you choose. So I'm not as intimate right now with which line I chose, can't remember. But it was very bold, and it required doing it before we could rehearse it because every night was a performance and the New York Times was coming the next day. And I just did it. I just did it. I just got out there and just made my performance so much more extreme and so much uglier without navigating it carefully. And I think people found that exciting. So I trust him. I trust him to take to do something embarrassing or raw. So anyway, that's the only like no, those are some of the performance experiences. But the emails between us were empowering, um, funny, educational, challenging. He says he hates self-deprecation, and it was my most unpleasant quality, he said. So I don't do it anymore. I don't think I've been self-deprecating today. I try
I don't-
not to. I used to be like throwing myself under the bus here and there, and he didn't like that. He didn't. He said it's the least attractive quality in all people. So he liked to lift you up. You know, he's a
well,
he.
and I would say that if he had a chance to listen to Sondheim in the City, he would realize that you have moved well past self-deprecation into truly gorgeous recording.
Oh, thank you. You know, he said, Melissa, you're a lot of things. You're an actress and a big band singer, or a girl singer, like in the old tradition. You are exploring that. So he said, keep exploring that. And he gave me advice on that. So he knew it was an enterprise. He knew I wasn't trying to do a cast album or play Sally because I can't get cast anywhere. That's not what I was doing. I like exploring the jazz side of things. He loved Ted Firth, my pianist. He said he can do no wrong. I have that on paper. So I printed it out for Ted. And he said, always sing the song that I wrote in the very beginning, then let the orchestra and the orchestration take you where you needed to go, and then do whatever you want. But he asked me if I would kindly be sure that I preserve the song he wrote. I think he likes jazz and people who are, making a total mess of it all. But that's not what he would want from me, you know, because I come from this tradition. I might as well not just snub it. So I've tried to walk the fine line. As Ted says, we've become jazz adjacent, you know. So anyway, I felt encouraged to explore, and I don't think that I've been disrespectful at the
I
same
don't
time.
think so at all. And even though he's not physically here to be at Birdland next week, I have a feeling he'll be in the room.
Oh, I don't know. Thank you. I'm doing my best. We're having a good time, and we're trying to, learn about ourselves through a master's music and be respectful and explore it and honor him at the same time as learn about a sort of music style. I'm so happy you like it. You see, it's kind of it's a swinging record. These are not theater musicians on
And you
it.
don't do theater performances either.
I don't think so. I mean, sometimes yeah, I don't think I do.
You don't. You don't.
It's a,
That's what
yeah,
stood out to me from the very opening track. I was going, okay, this all sounds different than I expected it to be, and I hope it stays this way through the whole album, and it does.
yeah,
It's
it
it's
does.
it, it's
Yeah,
you make me wish that I could just hop on a plane and be in New York next week to be at Birdland.
thank you. I have a lot. I have a lot to be proud of in this. A lot of great people were a part of it, and we had recording days that were super inspired. I had literally 24 hours before been touring with George Benson, and I came from Montreal where I'd done a bilingual show. It was all poppy jazz, and I was like, "What am I doing here?" And it was amazing. I just said, I said to the band, that band, I said, I'll do what I do and you do what you do. And I was singing Michel Legrand. I sang a Sondheim. I sang from a Guys and Dolls song. I uh, opened with a Harold Arlen, but they were funking it up so much. But I stayed clear on the message of the music and the lyric. And yet, this beautiful, funky, sensual environment, I thought really enhanced the poetry of all the American songbook stuff and very much the Legrand. So in the same way with this, like I hung true on this idea that I'm the kind of Carrie Bradshaw of my movie here. My Sondheim in the City, my Sex in the City. This is me finding myself midlife in this cool rhythmic pop environment, and just don't press too much. Just be, don't press, you know. So we were exploring a kind of pop mindset, you know. Gosh, I don't talk. I talk too much.
You know what? I wish we had hours to do this. So I hope that at whatever point I'm next in New York or you're next in Los Angeles, we can actually, have a bottle of white wine to celebrate Steve and talk.
Oh, let's do that. Let's do that. The only reason the interview has to end is because my daughter's in the National History Contest and I have to get down there. She's done a project on the Roman, I keep saying aqueduct, and she keeps correcting me, aqueduct. So I will go down and let her teach me all about the aqueduct.
Yes, and
But
she's just as precise about how things should be said as Steve was.
exactly, exactly. All these anal, over educated. You know, that's kind of what I like to think about too. Is that Sondheim was so interested in the overeducated and the New Yorker, and then their frailties. The other side, the anyone can whistles.
Right,
I can write about the aqueduct, but who am I? You
right.
know, that we become in life, and there's no more beautiful lines, in musical theater than those that came from him.
I
Uh,
I completely agree. Well, I'll
so
let you get off to your daughter's event at school. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Melissa.
Thank you. It's just been a lovely time talking. So
Thank
I
you.
hope, thanks for listening to it too.
Of course, of course.
Okay, white wine. Stay in
White
touch.
wine.
Bye.